a little bit from a story by Bette Howland, great Chicago writer, somebody who in the last few years has been sort of, quote, rediscovered, a phrase I'm somewhat dubious of. She didn't go anywhere. Her work didn't go anywhere. It just wasn't being read. But thankfully now it is, thanks to the work of Bridget Hughes at a public space magazine in Brooklyn, bringing out her reissuing Bette Howland's great books. But she's one of the great writers of recent memory from Chicago. And this is a story called Blue Chicago, and I'm just going to read a couple of pages. It's a family on the way to a wedding. It goes from the south side to uptown and then out on Eden's Highway north. My Uncle Rudy's height and hulking shoulders filled the space behind the wheel. A huge man, 6'4", 250 pounds, crew cut, bullet headed. The thick, close shaved folds of his skin lay on his neck. Even from the back, in his checked gray suit, you could tell a cop. I looked at the back of his head, wondering what he was thinking. Impenetrable. His head seems too small for the big body. His nose is a beak. When his nose got broken somehow on maneuvers, the army doctors wanted to make it over for him, but Rudy wouldn't hear of it. Why kibitz with destiny? He's somewhat deaf, you know. He lost the hearing of one ear in the service. He could have an operation for nothing, but he never will. Who needs another hole in the head? One's enough. It was April. The wind was blowing, fresh, tender soot, swirling papers, and fancifully in the gutters of uptown, my grandmother's neighborhood. The sky was heavy and full of gloom, but here and there a splinter, a gleam. Rudy pulled into the thick of the grimy, sluggish traffic, deaf or indifferent to our female conversation. I couldn't believe we were going to talk about my Aunt Roxanne's hair all the way to the wedding. Roxanne is Uncle Rudy's young wife, a big, handsome Southern girl, raw-boned, rock-jawed, her pale head dropped over her knitting, peculiarly pale, translucent, like rock candy, and almost as brittle. Oh, you did something to your hair, my mother remarked as we climbed in back. I don't like it, Roxanne said at once. Go back and make them do it over, my mother said. You pay enough, don't you? It smells pretty, though, my grandmother said, sniffing through the glitter of rhinestone frames. Roxanne flicked the yarn irritably over her forefinger. I don't like it, and so on. Hey, which way you going? My mother sat up suddenly erect, her striking white head looking all about. She was in black and white from head to toe, stark contrast, dark mink stole, long evening skirt, pointed shoes. I thought you were going to take Sheridan. Ha! We'd be there tomorrow, I took Sheridan, Rudy said, looking over his shoulder and showing the dark spaces in his teeth. He has a loud, offended voice, the result of his partial deafness. You mean to tell me you're going to take the Edens Expressway? Naturally. What do you think? I'm taking Edens. Edens? Who ever heard of something so stupid, taking Edens? My mother was rummaging in her purse. She took out a mimeographed sheet, a map of directions to the church in one of the northernmost suburbs. It had come with the invitations, and shoved it across the seat at her brother's big back. Here, look, you go straight out Sheridan. You'll be there in 15 minutes. You should have driven your own car. You want to take Sheridan. Rudy sat unmoved, eyes level, watching traffic in the mirror. I wouldn't say nothing more if I was you. Roxanne turned sideways in her seat to view my mother. We're liable to end up in Milwaukee. You know how stubborn Rudy is. Yes, he's had riot training. But my mother does not know how to desist. The irresistible force meets the immovable object, a routine encounter for her. After a while, she sat back, however, and began whispering to me, stating her case, thrusting the map under my nose. I'd already been en route an hour and a half from Hyde Park just to get to my grandmother's house, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it. That displeased her. She got angry with me, rattling the map in my face, her own face startlingly sallow under her beautiful white hair. She must have seen I had no sympathy with her either. I couldn't help that. My mother's panic is an old and potent enemy of mine. It was now noon. The wedding was called for 12:30. And when they say 12:30, They mean 12:30, my mother said, laying her hand to her cheek. That's not Jewish time, you know. They're late to the wedding. So great. Bette Howland, Blue Chicago. Thank you.